Hi folks, you're with Tassless today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about concepts and causes and the nature and structure of authority, and within that, respect for authority. Now, there are different types of authority and thus different types of respect for this authority. For example, and I'll use some illustrations here to suggest how much it's changed. There was a time, certainly in my lifetime when I was a kid, that if somebody with a PhD walked in the room, then there would be hushed awe, because this is someone who had achieved at the time, the highest level of education and achievement in education possible, and therefore within their area of expertise. There was no dispute that they were knowledgeable. So if they spoke or opined on that area of their expertise, others were quiet, me among them. And I respected their authority on the matter of again, within their area of expertise. And generally someone who has worked hard to achieve that in a merit-based system, then they should be, I believe, respected for those achievements. Now, it doesn't mean they have to, if they've got a PhD in, I don't know, fucking rocket science, it doesn't mean that you admire them or respect their ability to run a marathon or something. They're two different things, but within their area of expertise, so there's respect. Now, similarly, if people had been successful in business or successful in any endeavor, then again, me and certainly the people around me at the time, you would show them respect and indeed deference in relation to their achievements and their accomplishments. So I wouldn't say, oh, well, you're just a straight white guy, you damn fucking Nazi, I'm not going to respect what you've achieved. You just wouldn't even enter into your head at the time. Now, if they were the chairman's wastrel nephew who got gifted the job, you would still have, you wouldn't respect that necessarily, but you would respect the position they were in and the responsibility they held. So I've had bosses in the past, even when I was younger, who I didn't think much of, and I thought, no, I don't think they're very good, and that was just an opinion, of course, but maybe they got the job because they crawled a lot to the boss, or the boss was insecure and wanted to appoint a flunky. I mean, there's a million reasons why, but I would still respect the position they were in, because they held a certain amount of responsibility, and it was therefore, as I perceived it, my duty and obligation to support them and to be, well, certainly not a hindrance to them, but to support them and to still do the best I could in my job, which would in turn make their life easier and would cause them this. But again, these were in a merit situation where if things didn't work out, that guy's boss would give him a hard time. And so I was mindful of that and the respect of shown. So say respect for a judge in a court. Now, at the time, I believe courts were completely impartial, and the judge had a huge responsibility to be impartial and to administer the law, and to as a practitioner of jurisprudence, to ensure that the rules were scrupulously followed and that justice was done as much as humans can. And there were failures in the justice system and that sort of stuff. So, but nonetheless, so there was respect for judges. So I remember the first time I met a judge, I was in, again, sort of reverential awe of the importance of the responsibility they prepared to take on, and that they had, because at the time you had to be a trial lawyer of some repute, or in some cases a legal scholar, but particularly a trial lawyer of some repute, before you could ever get to be a judge. And being a judge meant that you almost were cut off at the time, meant you're almost cut off from society. You couldn't associate with sort of too many people, because it had to be seen that you were you were completely independent and impartial of all influences, other than obviously the evidence and the facts that came before you in any given case. So the first time I met a judge, I remember being in reverential awe of the judge for those, and very respectful of their position. And I was part of a group of people in a conversation. I'd have been, I don't know, 30 at the time, maybe 29, 30, something like that. And I kept, this is out of the courtroom, this is not in a court. And I kept talking to the guy. Some of the people there were his former school buddies. So they'd been to some rich elite private school together. And so I was like the outsider in that group. And so when I spoke to the judge, again, outside of the courtroom, I was very respectful and deferential. I spoke to him, Your Honour, and I called him Your Honour, and there was a bit of sniggering in the well, not sniggering, that's wrong. There was some sort of he doesn't understand type smiles around. The judge had to say, by the way, my name is John, or William, and you don't have to call me Your Honour. This is not the courtroom. So, and I remember having to sort of wrestle with that a little bit, because I wanted to show respect because of the position he held as a judge. This was in one of the senior courts as well. So this is the idea of respect and why we show it. Now, there were people I've known who, for example, have inherited a lot of money. They're from a long line of inherited money, and they've been to the very best private schools and to the best universities. They've they drive fancy cars, live in fancy houses. And I was respectful of them as well, as a younger man anyway, respectful of them as well, because of their wealth and power and influence and those sorts of things. And because they were rich and they had drive such great cars, they could get such hot chicks. So I was respectful of their situation more than I was the people. Sometimes I really didn't think much of the people, but was nonetheless respectful of their situation, and respectful of the influence they had, that they could pick up the phone and they could arrange for themselves a prestigious, particularly prestigious, well-paid job somewhere within a 2-minute phone call. I mean, I couldn't do that. So I was respectful of those sorts of things. So respect for authority. For example, school teachers. I respected school teachers because they were if you like, the authority figures, and they were more knowledgeable on the subject than I was. And again, respecting bosses and so on. Now, I met people who I thought were very bright, exceptionally bright, unusually high IQs. I respected them. I respected people who'd achieved and accomplished things. I respected people who'd started with not very much and had achieved a great deal. And again, people's level of responsibility and of the responsibility they had to carry, the duty and obligations they had to society. Those were the reasons for, as I saw it, those were the reasons for respecting authority and accepting authority. So when someone knowledgeable said, say my boss, so say even a boss. Now, I assume, and this was largely true, although not always, but it's largely true, that my boss was there because he'd accomplished things that I hadn't yet accomplished. He'd achieved things I hadn't yet achieved. And because of that, in a merit system, assuming a merit system, because of that, I was respectful of his position, and I was duty bound to accept, not simply respect his authority, but accept his authority in terms of accepting direction. So if he said, "Hey, Billy Bob, do this or do that," then I felt I had a duty and obligation to do that, or if I had questions to ask them, but to do that because he knew better than I did. He'd accomplished more than I did, achieved more than I did in a merit system. Therefore, now it wasn't perfect. There were times when flunkies, again, the chairman's nephew or some insecure manager had got into position and they just wanted surrounded with flunkies. Those things still happened. But in a merit system, they didn't happen that much, and people that behaved that way didn't last as long. It's almost like a gene pool. the laziest, useless, insecure people didn't typically, it wasn't perfect, but typically didn't last that long. The higher achievers and the more capable, more competent did do better. And because of that, I said, now that's all broken down. That doesn't really exist anymore. You talking to college kids or even high school kids now, why do they respect their teachers? They respect their teachers because they don't want to get a bad grade. That's sort of one. But they respect their teachers because the teachers say, well, any problem in the world, it's not your fault. It's the fault of those fucking Nazis, those fascist fucking Nazi Hitlers. It's them. They did it. That's where the world's climate change, Hitler, and so on and so forth. So you respect them because they say, well, nothing is your responsibility, and anything that's wrong is the fault of Nazis. So it's not a respect for their teachers or their lecturers. It's, hey, these people are telling me that I don't have to accept any responsibility. And if something goes, all I have to do is say I hate Hitler, and they'll give me a PhD. So merit has disappeared, and so this idea of respecting people for achievements has gone. So if you're a self-confident, high-achieving, straight white guy, you are Hitler. So you're someone to be despised and hated, not respected. And your authority is to be disregarded. If you're, say, a spiritual leader, Christian leader, a priest or something, then you're a pedophile Nazi. And that's not to be, that shouldn't achieve or gather or garner any respect. And therefore you have no authority. And the list goes on. As much as people like judges to make decisions to validate their trans ideology or something, they don't have respect for these judges. They believe they're just ideological people who can be bought and sold. So if you're a judge that fabricates evidence or disallows evidence, and you're fighting Nazis, then you're good. Are you doing a good job as a judge and adjudicating the law? Well, no, but that doesn't matter because now the job is to fight Nazis. But do you respect that? Well, no, they're just fighting Nazis. They're just Nazi fighters. They're not judges anymore. Okay. And the list goes on. And I meet people now in business all the time. And whereas there was a time when I would employ the people I met, I could say, well, I can see why that person's got that job. It's because they've achieved this, accomplished that, or produced these results, or so on. And you'd sort of look at them, or I would anyway, look at them and say, well, gee, that person really deserves that, or this person really knows what they're doing. And it makes your life so much easier when you're dealing with people that know what they're doing. And and that could be at any level, whether it's a business interaction, or going to see a doctor, or buying something in a shop, or something. If the person knows what they're doing, it makes life easier for everybody. But when people don't know what they're doing, they're being appointed because of race and gender quotas and the like, then you're meeting people through affirmative action. You're meeting people who haven't achieved anything. And they may be incapable of achieving anything. They may be so stupid that they will never achieve anything, nor are they encouraged to do that, because the general climate now is if you do achieve more than the absolute minimum, less 10%, if you do achieve anything, then you're trying to say you're better than someone else. And because of that, that makes you a fucking Nazi. So no one is really invested in that anymore, or assuming they're even capable in the first place. So it's produced a tyranny of incompetence, where authority is no longer respect. You respect the authority of someone who's can fire you, or you respect that. But if you're a transgender black lesbian, then chances are you can't be fired anyway. So you don't respect that type of authority. So it's the moral, the authority of the moral outrage scene that kids are exposed to in school and of course in college, and given the vast amount of sociology type courses, gender studies, colonialism studies, and all this sort of thing. The endless array of studies that say all white people are bad, evil Nazis. So because of that, merit in all descriptions has gone and been replaced, into that vacuum has become the authority of moral outrage. So provided the diversity, equity, inclusion officer is running around saying, Nazis are everywhere, straight white males are Hitler, provided that gives them the moral authority to say, well, I like that because that person, that moral outrage means I have no accountability for my actions. I'm not responsible. Anything that goes wrong is because of Nazis. I don't have to do a good job or try hard because, arriving on time and working hard and doing a good job means that I'm a Nazi. So if I arrive late, do a shit job and fuck everything up, then I'm not a Nazi. So the very concept of where we perceive a moral authority derived from responsibility or achievement is now a moral authority that's derived purely on invented social Marxist outrage. So I would argue that the whole idea of authority, respect for authority, and what even represents authority, and what is the moral guiding principles of our society have all pretty much broken down. And I come across this in numerous workplaces that if you're a straight white male with any sort of accomplishments, you are a Nazi. That's it. You're not welcome. We don't want Nazis here. And the affirmative action quotas, race and gender quotas, sort of really entrench this attitude where to justify hiring incompetent idiots and low IQ morons, the moral outrages are, well, if we don't have all these, black, lesbian, trans, IQ minus 5 million people, then if we don't have that, then the Nazis would come. The Nazis, and we can't have that. So, and I think this has now gripped the whole thing, and it's affected me as well. I've come across all the time now. I come across people that I don't respect in business. I think you shouldn't even be here. You're only here because of affirmative action quota. You're fucking useless. It's taken me 10 times longer to get anything done through you than it would through someone who knows what they're doing. How you even got this fucking job? Those sorts of things. And the same with, say, judges. Now you have to be a little cautious because the judge with the stroke of a pen can put you in prison. So you have to be a little cautious there. But do I respect any of these judges? I look at all the activist judges around the place that brazenly stacked the outcome of the court hearing to produce one outcome or another. So I'm thinking, well, I don't respect you. So the last time I was in a situation, which was recently, where there were a whole bunch of judges in the in this sort of place. We were at this function. And I was probably didn't say anything, but I was looking at them thinking, gee, I wouldn't put you on a judge. I wouldn't put you I wouldn't appoint you as a judge. You're nothing more than a fucking screaming fucking activist. What are you even doing there? Now these are people that I wouldn't, appoint to sweep the floor. So, well, not literally, but certainly I wouldn't appoint the judges. They're rabid activists. Their wives and partners are rabid activists. They hang with a rabid activist sort of crowd. They've got no compunction about, rubbing shoulders with the most activist NGOs around, in their private time and have private communications with them. These sorts of things. So I've got no respect for those sort of people. They're not there to administer and adjudicate the law and the facts. They're quite the opposite. So all the people that I once respected, it's the same with PhDs or any, a degree, a master's, a PhD, it's all affirmative action there. Not that there aren't people who do earn it, there still are, but it's all affirmative action now, pretty much. And so, the amount of black people with PhDs now is like, oh, yeah, right. So I don't respect. So if somebody walks around with a PhD now, I just assume that there's the probability, especially if they're not straight white males, the probability is it's all through affirmative action. So I don't respect that, and just on it goes. So none of the traditional areas of respect. Here's another one. Here's a rich guy inherited a lot of money, and he was giving me, this is not long ago, he was giving me a big lecture about how he's friends with Al Gore, the inconvenient truth propagandist. He's friends with Al Gore, and Al Gore's told him that he should use public transport more often or something like that. And so he's running around virtue signaling, and then he tries to tell me, so, oh, why don't you sell your cars and use public transport? Well, why the fuck would I do that? Well, because Al Gore said so. That two-bit flunky globalist propagandist, like, no. And but he was giving me this crap. So I'm thinking, well, you're an idiot. And he said, oh, global warming is going to end the planet. Well, why the fuck do you have a $32 million waterfront property with your own private jetty and a boat on? Like, don't give me this crap. So I've stopped respecting those sort of people as well. And I feel, in my view at least, this is sort of a disappointment that these areas or tradition. I'm older now than I was when I was a younger guy. I was more easily impressed, but nonetheless, I would argue that authority has broken down, and I think that's a tragedy for our society. You're being with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.